Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing an updated one-trick video for the back half of Season 9 going into Season 10. So special thanks to BioPhoton for sponsoring this video. I really appreciate it. I do these types of videos about twice a year or so. I could do them more often if people would like it, so just let me know. But one thing about one tricks is that it shouldn't really be that dependent on the meta, and we'll talk about that here in a second. The best one tricks are going to be good regardless of meta, because you don't want to spend hundreds of games trying to one trick a champion only to have a key item or some key interaction nerfed about that champion, and then it's no longer good, right? And that's happened before. So I have standardized tier lists for every patch that comes out, so be sure to check those out. I always do support, but I'm going to start doing other roles as well. Often I'll do like AD carry and sometimes jungle, but I'm going to see if I can start doing every role. But those are really intended, those tier lists are intended to keep up with the meta, to tell you what's good, you know, on any particular meta, right? But this is for long term. This is, you know, so that you can feel confident if you invest hundreds of games in a champion, it's going to be good for quite a while, most likely, unless there are some very, very dramatic changes about the champion. Okay, but let's just go ahead real quickly. I just want to talk about the perks and cons of one tricking, the qualities of a good one trick, what I'm looking for when I'm picking these out, and then the difference between what I'm classifying as kind of gold minus for one tricking and platinum plus for one tricking. Now, BioPhoton asked specifically for high elo, like he said, I think like Challenger and Pro Play. And I will say that Pro Play, you should not be a one trick, and one tricks often get punished in Pro Play because they know who you are, right? So one of the big things in solo queue is you don't know who your enemy is. So you can't ban out their one trick. But if you come in and someone's like, hey, this guy one tricks Aurelion Sol, or this guy one tricks Riven, or whatever, they might just ban you out. So it's nice if you're really, really good on that champion, so maybe they have to ban you out. But that's a different kind of dynamic. Like, you're wanting them to have to ban your one trick to save your team some extra, or to give your team more tactical flexibility, because then that opens up a ban that they're not using on something else that your teammates might need. So it's a very, very different dynamic, and so you really can't one trick. You have to be able to adapt. You have to be flexible in Pro Play. But I will mention some things that are particularly good in Challenger. But I think that a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about for Platinum Plus is also going to be very similar to what would be the best in Challenger. The one exception to that would probably be supports. So we'll talk about that when we get down there. But things like Braum, Tom, and Yuumi are specifically very good in Challenger, and they're not really that good even in Platinum Plus. I would say even in Low Diamond, they're not going to be that great. So that's really one of the only roles I think that's dramatically different at Challenger versus in terms of one-trick efficiency versus, you know, what you might see in Platinum Plus. Okay. Let's go ahead and get in here. As always, if you want to skip around, you'll have timestamps in the description. If you don't have time to watch the whole video, remember that you can on YouTube click on the little cog, the playback feature, to speed it up to 1.25 or 1.5 if you want to listen to it a little bit faster. I will have a link to this Google Doc in the description as well if you want to kind of use it as a cheat sheet to help yourself remember, you know, my recommendations for one tricking. If you'd like to sponsor a guide yourself, just email me at thestrategyprofessor@gmail.com. I'm happy to help you out with that. If you're a paying member of the channel, either through YouTube or my Twitch channel, The Strategy Professor on Twitch, you get $5 off, so it's $25. If you're not a member, then it's just $30. I think it's pretty good for the amount of research that I put in and time and effort that I put into these videos. So if you have an idea for a guide that you'd like to see, just email me, let me know, thestrategyprofessor@gmail.com, and we can set that up. Be sure to check out the rest of the content on the channel as well. We have tons of guides, tier list, lots of other content like this, and I stream every night starting around 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Sunday and Thursday. Sunday through Thursday, that's going to be on YouTube, and then Friday and Saturday, the weekend, we stream on Twitch. So be sure to come by, check that out. We'd love to have you. It's an awesome community. Okay, so why one trick in general? Okay, so if you one trick, you're just going to know matchups better. You're going to know exactly when you should all in. You're going to know which items you should get. You're going to know how you should play around different situations because you've seen it all, right? You're also going to have better mechanics, which is related to this one. So you're going to be much better at last hitting in particular. You're going to be much better at hitting the skill shots that you need. You're going to be much better at countering whatever the enemy's trying to do to you because you're going to have experience. Right, so if you're trying to wonder, you know, what do these abilities do or what should I be doing in this situation, it's going to be a lot tougher to last hit. It's going to be a lot tougher to make the right play at the right time. And also, it frees up your macro is number 3. So if you don't have to spend the whole time thinking about what you should be doing in situations, putting your full mental effort into hitting that skill shot, or, you know, whatever it is that you're doing in lane, you're going to be able to track the jungler better. You're going to be able to shot call better. You're going to be able to understand what you should be doing on the map better, because you're actually going to be able to look at the minimap and spend some of your brain power on that. Because remember, your brain has a limited amount of power, right? There's only so many different things you can keep track of at the same time. So if you kind of put these into just like almost like autopilot for, you know, 70% of what you should be doing on a champion, then that frees up your mental ability to refine some of the mechanics and also to pay better attention to macro. Okay, so what are the overall qualities of good one-tricks, though? And I would say, just as a caveat to one-tricks here, make sure you have a backup. So it's good to be highly specialized in a champion in League of Legends. You don't get punished for that very often because they don't know who you are on the enemy team, so they can't ban you out. League might change that in the future. I don't know. They haven't indicated that, but I think that would be a really good change for solo queue. Because it feels like if a one-trick goes up against someone who's auto-filled or just doesn't play that champion very much that they're playing, then they're going to get smashed. So I think one-tricking is kind of a problem for League, but it's also kind of cool to just feel like you own the champion, like you have a good expertise with it. So I don't know if they're ever going to do that, but you do want to have a backup. Just in case your one-trick gets banned or one-trick gets picked, you can dodge if you want to. But it's good to have like a 2 or 3 trick is what I usually say. So be very proficient in like your one champion if you want a one trick, but also have a backup. Usually it's a similar type of champion. So if you play assassins a lot, it's usually another assassin that you're going to play. If you play a bruiser or a tank a lot, it's usually another tank. Or you can take the strategy where you want to have like one assassin, but if they have a good counter pick for you, then maybe you pick a certain kind of tank instead. So there's different theories for different ways that you should pick your backup. You can either be diversified or have a backup that's pretty much the same thing so that you're familiar with how it plays. But either way, you should make sure that you have a backup. Okay, so qualities of a good one-trick. I think that if it has less than a 20% pick or ban rate, that's really good. That means you're going to get it in only 1 out of 5 games. You're not going to get it. So 80% of the time, you're probably going to get the champion. So you don't want to pick stuff that has a huge spotlight on it a lot of the time. There will be some of them down here that I recommend that you can try to pick, but you better have a good backup. So if you want to play Yasuo, for example, you better have a plan B because he's going to be banned in a lot of games. But yeah, obviously, the lower the pick rate, the lower it is on somebody's radar, the more likely you are to play that champion. So you really don't want to play stuff that's like super popular in pro, although once again, there will be some of those here, because it tends to get not only banned out, but, and that's kind of what we're getting into with pro presence here, it has an eye on it, so it's going to get picked a lot, it's going to get banned a lot, and it might also have a much higher probability of getting nerfed if it's OP in pro play. So you got to be careful with that. That's where one-tricking is a bit different from playing the meta, you know, patch to patch with the tier list videos that I do, is that you kind of want something that's under the radar. But the problem is a lot of the stuff that's under the radar is not going to be that good because most people have figured out what's really good, at least sort of at the higher levels of play. So it's kind of like a catch-22. You know, you want to find something that's not that popular, but it's not that popular probably because it's not that good. Although there are always some gems in the coal mine there. That is kind of a tension that you need to be aware of. You want to pick something that has also versatile itemizations and runes. This is really important because, you know, you don't want to not be able to play a champion just because they nerf out the key item of that champion. So a lot of the best champions on here will have a plan B. It's like, okay, well, it has a lethality build. It has, you know, some other kind of build that it can get, some kind of AD build, or it's got an AP build or an AD build, like Kai'Sa is a great example of this. There's so many different ways that she can itemize that regardless of how they change the item, she's going to be ready for that, right? She's going to have an answer to that. So that's a good thing to have. And not everyone's going to have all of these properties, obviously, right? But these are just things to look at, to think about. And the more of these things they have, the more likely it is that they're going to be a pretty good one trick. So just versatile items and runes. You don't want your champion to be completely pushed out of the meta if a single item or rune gets nerfed. Proficient in many metas. So good, pretty good in a tank meta, pretty good in an AD carry meta, mage meta. You know, they're just going to be good in a whole lot of different situations. And then they're going to be OP. So what I consider to be OP is there are 3 categories, pretty much. And if a champion, and I call this resilience, damage, and mobility. Now, resilience is kind of like tankiness, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a tank. It can be a champion that has different abilities that mitigate damage, or they could have really high base stats and base scaling. So Irelia is an example of this. She's very hard to kill, even though she's not technically a tank, right? Because she's got her W to block quite a bit of damage. She has fairly high base stats, and just the way that she ends up itemizing makes her pretty resilient, right? When she goes Trinity, Sterix, Titanic Hydra, she's pretty tough to kill, and she's got healing off of her Q. So, resilience, difficult to kill, high damage, and high mobility. If a champion has all three of these, it's going to be really overpowered, probably. So, thinking of something like Sylas, very difficult to kill, really high damage, and pretty high mobility, right? So, that's the kind of thing that you want to be looking for OP. Limited counterplay, so there are not very many, like, super obvious picks that are going to hard counter this champion, right? Where if you pick this champ, they're going to have pretty good gameplay into most situations. Yeah, some champions will be better into them than others, but you don't want to try to one-trick a champion where if they pick something that just, like, hard counters it, then you're going to be completely out of luck, right? So just make sure that there aren't a lot of popular counter picks that are good in many metas. And then finally, a versatile playstyle. So ideally, you want to play something that can adapt to different situations. So it can snowball really hard if you're ahead. A lot of these champions are going to be very aggressive early, and if they get ahead, they can snowball. They can take their advantage to other lanes. If they're good in multiple lanes, this is also versatile. So if it's a champion that can be played mid lane and top lane, or a champion that can be played top lane and jungle, in pro play, they call this flex pick. So those are very good in pro, but they're also good in solo queue, because if you pick something like Irelia, and they pick something that's pretty good into Irelia in the top lane, and you know who their mid laner is, you can just ask the mid lane, hey, can I switch with you? Can you go top so that I can avoid this counter pick? And, you know, some people might say no way, but some people might say sure. So the fact is, whenever you lock something like Irelia or Akali or Sylas, people don't know where you are. So it's hard for them to know if they should counter pick you. The top laner on the enemy team might be thinking, okay, is that Irelia in my lane or is it mid lane? Or they might be thinking, is that Sylas mid lane or top lane or jungle? We don't know. So we don't know if we should counter pick it. So if they pick like a hard counter to Sylas top lane, but you're actually playing Sylas in the jungle, then your top laner might be able to play something that counters what they picked for the top lane. So it just puts a lot of extra stress on the enemy team to figure out how they should be creating their comp. And that matters a lot more in Platinum Plus, but that can even be important in Gold, right? Where people don't often think of team comps. They just play whatever they want to play in like Gold Minus, but it can be relevant. So just something that's versatile is usually really good, that can adapt to different situations. Different win cons are also good, you know, if they have a split push option, or if they're really good at taking objectives, if they're really good at assassinating people. If they can do several of these things, if there are different styles of gameplay, whether it's 5v5 team fighting or split pushing or just like Clown Fiesta roaming around, they should be good in all of those kinds of situations. Ideally, the best one-tricks will be good in multiple situations. And then finally, kind of the difference between Gold and Plat here, just so we understand. In Platinum, there's going to be higher game knowledge, so there's going to be matchups, there's going to be better macro, so people are going to be much more aware of counter picks, and this obviously gets better as you go into Diamond, Masters, Challenger, and so on. But you just have to, people are going to know a lot more, so you can't exploit them. Because some of these picks that I'm going to pick for Gold, something like Yorick, a lot of people in Gold Minus don't really know how Yorick works. Like, they don't know what the ghouls do, they don't know exactly how much damage he can do. But as you start moving up, you're not going to catch people by surprise as often. They're going to know, okay, Yorick's going to do this much damage. Okay, Garen's going to do this much damage. Okay, Yasuo is going to use his wind wall here, so I'm not going to use my abilities right now. I'm going to hold him. You know, they're going to make those kinds of judgment calls. Versus in Gold, they're not going to know that. They're going to constantly be surprised by how much damage you put out. They're not going to respect your engage as often. That type of stuff. There's also going to be better mechanics in Plat Plus, so people are going to be better at dodging skill shots, people are going to be better at hitting skill shots, people are going to be better at last hitting, so that means there's going to be a lot more gold in circulation, people are going to hit their power spikes earlier, and just their reactions are going to be better. They're going to be able to flash things like a Nami bubble, they're going to flash hooks, they're just going to have a lot better reactions, and so that makes things that aren't skill shots a lot more valuable. right? So if it's something that's just like really high probability that it's going to happen, it's going to be really good. So something like a Recon engage versus a Blitzcrank engage. A lot of people at higher elo are going to know how to play around a Blitz hook, but like a Recon, like Flash ult, is a lot harder to get around than that is. That's what makes Recon and champions like that a lot better, because it's much more consistent. It's much more likely you're going to hit it against people that have good reaction times. There's a lower gold economy in higher elos, sort of. And for supports, yes, 100%. We'll talk about supports in a little bit. But people will last hit more, so they're going to have more gold from that, but there's also going to be less kills in the game, and it's going to be a lot less chaotic. So I still think that overall, and games are going to close out a lot faster in higher elo, because people are going to know what they're doing. They're not going to make as many mistakes to throw the enemy back into the game, and they're going to macro better to just close the game faster. So in lower elos, though, I think there's going to be a lot more gold circulating, just because there's going to be more kills, and games are going to drag out for an additional 5 or 10 minutes. And so champions that need to scale a little bit better, right? Some of those tier champions like, I don't know, Kassadin, Ryze, things like that might do a little bit better in lower elo. Although Ryze is kind of an exception. He's very difficult to play, but you're going to have a lot less gold. Games are faster. Rotations are better. We just mentioned those. And I just mentioned kind of the danger of thinking about pro pick one tricks. A lot of times you see the same types of champions. So if we look at pro right here, you know, things like Azir and Corki have been very popular for a long time, but I'll guarantee you the people that play those champs are not one tricks. They've just adapted to the meta. So if it's someone who's playing Azir all the time right now and he's very popular, if they nerf out Azir, those people would have no problem just immediately switching back over to playing more Kiana or playing more Syndra or whatever ends up being meta, you know, in 3 or 4 months. So that's not the same as one tricking. Like, popularity in a specific meta is not the same as one tricking a champion. It's different. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. So hopefully that clears up kind of what I'm thinking about, the qualities that I'm looking for, and sort of what I mean when I'm talking about gold minus versus plat plus, just in a broad sense. Okay, so let's talk about top lane first. All right, so I think Akali is going to be one of the best ones, and these aren't necessarily like, I've kind of got them in order descending, but I'm just kind of thinking like top 5 overall. Like, all of them could be pretty good. Now, my last tier list that I did back in December, I had Akali, Irelia, and Aatrox as honorable mentions, because they had been so dominant and so powerful last fall, and they had received a couple of nerfs that I just thought they were going to nerf them into the dirt. People were just going to be tired of seeing these champions, and Riot was going to find a way to nerf them, but they haven't. So it's like, sort of. They have had nerfs. Their win rates are down a little bit across the board, but they're still extremely popular. They're still extremely powerful if you're good on those champions. So, like, Aatrox is still the #1 pick top laner with a high win rate and a high ban rate in pro play. And dude has been nerfed just a ton. All 3 of these have been nerfed a ton, but they're still really good. So that tells me that Riot really doesn't know how to balance these champions very well, and I don't think that's a secret to anybody. But they don't want to completely nerf them out of the meta. So what they've decided to do, and they've been doing this more and more with balancing, is they've said, okay, we're going to make this champion like a 45% win rate in solo queue, but if someone is very, very good on the champion, if they have a high level of mastery, then we're still going to let the champion be pretty much OP. And so that's perfect for one tricking. So Akali right now, if you look at her overall win rate here, go to top lane. Win rates. A lot of these champions are going to be kind of down near the bottom. Akali is a little bit higher. She's at like 48%. But the key metric that you want to look at here, she still is really strong. She still can completely dominate a game. But she's only banned 15% of the time now, and she's picked 6.8% of the time. So that means she only has about like a 22-23% pick ban rate. So that's pretty close to the 20% that I mentioned. So there's a really high probability that you're going to be able to pick her up. And she still snowballs really hard. So the stuff that they nerfed about her are they nerfed her smoke, which, let's be honest, most people didn't really maximize her smoke anyways most of the time. So they flatlined it. Let me just pull out the patch history here. Which this is League Wiki, so you can just look that up on Google. It's got patch history. It has all the current stats. It's great. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. I just think it's a good site, so give them a little shout out there. But yeah, they did give her some extra health regen, and some of the most recent changes that they made is they increased her damage on her 5-point strike. The Shroud no longer has true sight, so it can be seen by towers, but like I said, a lot of people weren't really maximizing it that much. The cooldown has changed to 20, so that means that you can put all of your secondary points in Shuriken Flip, which ultimately gives you more burst damage, but you still get a 20-second cooldown on it. Energy restored is 80 at all ranks, so once again, you can just put 1 point in it and get a lot of power off of that. And the duration is no longer extended by 2 seconds if you break and then re-enter stealth. Once again, this is really top-end play, like Challenger level play. So she may have fallen off a little bit in Challenger, but for everyone else who are not like the top 200 people in the United States or in whichever region, it's going to be much better. And they added a ton of extra damage to Shuriken Flip as well. They did increase the cooldown on Perfect Execution, but this has basically meant that she's going to be a lot more accessible to a lot of people, even, you know, like people in Plat, Low Diamond. I mean, I would say even people in Gold and Silver, if they spend a lot of time with her, you know, she can be a lot better. So I think that's really nice. So pretty good itemization. Gunblade is usually a fairly safe item. It has not been touched in a really long time. There are only a couple of sort of champions that use that item. That's core on her, and they just tend to nerf champions that use Gunblade rather than Gunblade itself. So I think Gunblade's pretty safe. They haven't touched it in many, many years. And the rest of her itemization is pretty flexible aside from Gunblade, right? Like she can go Death's Dance, she can go Hourglass. There's a lot of stuff. So if they nerf out things like Death's Dance or they nerf out Hourglass, then she can still find other stuff to build that's pretty good because she does both. She scales off of both AP and AD, so that means that she's going to be flexible in terms of her itemization. The only thing she's not flexible on is Gunblade. She really needs that item to be strong, but the rest of it, like I said, she can adapt, and I think that she can be pretty good. There's even been like some tank Akali builds out there with like Trinity Force and things like that. I think that's fallen out of the meta, but there's a lot of different builds you can do on her to be very, very impactful and very powerful. So I think she's going to be near the top of the list. Irelia is another person that I put up there. Irelia hasn't had as much luck in pro. Well, actually, she's pretty good. Pretty good mid lane. Still has some pretty good presence. Top lane still pretty good. Her win rate overall, kind of like Akali, is going to be down in the dumpster. So if you look here, it's the 45% crew. But once again, you put a ton of time into Irelia, she's still going to be really, really good. So what makes Irelia good? Well, she has a really good single item power spike, kind of like the Gunblade on Akali. She has Trinity Force, has really good components. You know, once you get something like Sheen, you can definitely start laying into people, doing a ton of damage with your Qs. And so she just has really nice sort of linear scaling and progression as soon as she gets that one item. And she's powerful on 1, 2, and 3 items. So she just has a really nice curve out with her power. And she has some pretty good just baseline stats, right? Got 36 armor, which is pretty respectable. 335 move speed, like pretty good health at 580. And then, you know, everyone's pretty familiar with Irelia at this point. She just has, she's like the ultimate violation of these 3 things that I talked about. She's very resilient when she goes Trinity and Hysterics. She does a ton of damage, scales really hard, and she has insane mobility that just like resets over and over again with Blade Surge. They refuse to nerf that about her. So she can just zip along and just heal up, you know, every time she does extra damage. She's going to be doing some extra, I think it's healing on her Q. Yes. Once you max this up, 20% of your AD. So yeah, she can just Blaze Surge on a minion wave and just pretty much refill all of her health. So she's just ridiculous. I mean, they've tried nerfing her a million different ways. They've made her a little bit more vulnerable to magic damage because they made her W just block physical damage instead of magic damage. You know, they've tried nerfing her ult like 3 or 4 times. They've nerfed, I think, her Q and her passive a few different times. I think they took away the shield breaking on her passive. But it just doesn't matter. The bottom line is she does a ton of damage. She has a lot of mobility. She has a lot of outplay potential. You can block a ton of damage off of Defiant Dance. You know, you can dodge a lot of skill shots off of your Q. She just has a ton of power, and a lot of top-end Irelias and Challenger are still playing her. They're still making her look good. She's still in pro play, even after like 20 nerfs. So you have to get used to her, but once you get used to her, I think she is very, very strong into most matchups. So I think that she's still good to master. And they haven't nerfed her like that recently, I don't think. They've kind of chilled on Akali and Irelia, and I haven't seen as much outrage about those champions as I have about things like Aatrox. So they nerfed her a few patches ago, Flawless Duet. You know, a slap on the wrist. You're only going to use this once per fight anyways. You know, I don't think it's going to matter that much. Yeah, the target range is reduced a little bit. But the last, like, meaningful nerfs were down here in 9-3. So they've pretty much left her alone for about 12 patches, and she's been undercover, like, really, really good the entire time. So I think she's great to pick up. It looks like they're going to chill on her and just not nerf her that much more. So I thought they would have nerfed her, like I said, near the start of the season a lot more, but they've left her in a very strong state. And that brings us to the third Violator here. They did nerf Urgot pretty much into the ground. He was kind of the fourth horseman. Last fall at Worlds, it was Akali, Irelia, Aatrox, and Urgot were all just like super OP, and Urgot actually got smacked really hard, so he's down quite a bit, at least in terms of pro presence. But Aatrox is another one. Now, Aatrox has had several meaningful changes, but they haven't like outright hard nerfed him. So they got rid of his like ability to come back or whatever, his revive, which I thought was going to be the nail in the coffin. I thought he was going to be terrible after that. But it turns out that like giving him this extra healing amplification, especially early on, was enough to still keep him and make him really strong. And they buffed a whole bunch of other stuff about him with his stance and his World Ender and, you know, all of that stuff. But I would suspect if anyone gets nerfed, I think he's most likely of these top three that I mentioned, to get nerfed, just because he has such high pro presence right now. It's, you know, most picked by far top lane, third most banned. So I think he, you know, he definitely has a magnifying glass on him. People are watching Irelia very closely too, and Akali somewhat to a lesser extent. But I think if one of those three was going to get nerfed in the next 6 months or so, meaningfully, I would think it would probably be Aatrox. But anyways, I still think he's going to be really good. Does a ton of damage, has a lot of healing. If they don't get any kind of Grievous Wounds effects, then you're just going to run over with the lane. So I think he's still going to be very, very strong. Riven is another one. Now, Riven's kind of a special case, and this is one that I think she's actually getting nerfed a little bit next patch. She almost never sees pro play. I don't think this last week or so. Yeah, she didn't really see any. There's a couple of specialists in NA, like Viper, you know, plays her sometimes, but by and large, she almost never sees pro play. She just has tough matchups, and she can be camped, and if she doesn't get ahead early, then she has virtually no utility, so you really have to snowball hard. But historically, I would say that she has, over the years, I would say she's the best one-trick top laner. I don't have any like hard stats to pick back that up, and you couldn't really tell from win rate or whatever, but you just look at the sheer number of people that are very proficient at Riven, that are near the top of the ladder. I don't think they're that many right now, but just like someone like Adrian here is basically a Riven one trick, and he's fourth on the ladder. He's the highest ranked top laner. Now he has some backups too. He has Camille that he can play as well pretty well, but it's just, if you've really followed League over the years, there's almost always somebody that's near the very top of the ladder that's pretty good on Riven. You know, it's like a rite of passage. You got Adrian Riven, you've got Viper, as mentioned before, has been #1 several times. I can't remember the other ones. If you flip through this, you'd see more. I don't know if Licorice does Riven or not, top lane. I pretty much practices pro picks top. But she's going to be very, very good historically. So, and she's got some pretty versatile itemization too. Like, yeah, she likes Conquer, but, you know, there have been some times where she's taken other stuff as well. You know, I think she was even taking Aftershock for a little bit there. You know, there have been different builds where she'll go like Bloodthirster Blade, Death's Dance type of thing. She's done Lethality in the past. When Lethality is really strong. So she's pretty versatile. She always does physical damage, but I think that there are a lot of different types of items that can be good with her. So she has some insulation from that. She can also be played mid lane, and I think she can be played in the jungle, although that's a lot less common. So she can be played in multiple lanes. These three picks can also be played in mid lane as well. So that's another, you know, aspect of them that makes them pretty strong. But she's just very mobile. She has a ton of damage. She's really hard to play mechanically, so a lot of people don't play her well. So it's usually only one tricks that pick her, which means that often she'll have a fairly low pick rate. Like, she'll have a decent ban rate, usually like 15 to 20%. It's actually really low. It's historically low right now, I think. But she has a very low pick rate, almost always, like 10% or less. So yeah, so that's really good. She's only got like a 16% presence right now. So I think she's really good. She scales with a bunch of different items. She's got a lot of mobility. She's got a stun. She's got shields. She has a lot of outplay potential where you can really like fake people out where they think they're going to beat you in all in, and all of a sudden you just stun them and kill them with like 1% of your health left, or you just like get that last little E in there to get that big shield and that big little burst of health off of healing from your Bloodthirst or your Death Stance or your Conqueror or whatever. And you can just really catch people off guard and surprise them when you get really, really good on her. So she's got a lot of fake out potential, a lot of outplay potential. So I think she's going to be really, really good if you get proficient on her. And then the last one is Sylas. Now, Sylas has been a problem child for a long time, and they've tried to adjust this champion a lot. He's still really strong. He's popular in mid. He's popular in jungle, and he gets played some in top. But the fact that he has that much presence in mid and jungle, and he's still like kind of represented in the top lane, and he's banned out a lot, he might have some nerfs coming at him. But every time they change him, curiously enough, like it's almost never fully a nerf. It's always like just changes. Like they just make him like try to max Q instead, or then they'll make him max W. They'll make him max E, and then they'll go back and make him max Q again. It's like they just keep like just tossing him around. But you just look at all of these changes. Like, it's ridiculous. So you have to stay up to date. You know, read your patch notes carefully if you're playing him. But he still remained like very strong the entire time. They just change what you have to do. But I think that's a testament to his power. It's like they can't even figure out like what should he be? Should he be like a bruiser, a tanky bruiser type of champion? Should he be an AP burst assassin? Should he be a jungler, mid laner, top laner? Who knows? Like Riot can't figure it out. It's like people just always find out a way to just make him very strong. So I think that's a testament to his power. He has a lot of utility in his kit. He's got sort of that healing that has a lot of outplay potential with Kingslayer. Can really catch people off guard with that in all ends. He's got catch with his E, where you can grab people with the chains. You can dodge people, or you can dodge skill shots with the E. Of course, you can take people's ults, and that has all kinds of ramifications to it, especially in solo queue. People like champions that have high-impact ults. I think that's part of why Corki is so strong right now. It's because Sylas really can't take his ult and do anything with it. But yeah, I think he's going to be really strong moving into the future. It's possible they just straight take a hammer to him. But, I mean, they have shown, like I said, a large unwillingness to do that. They just want to change him. They don't want to completely nerf him out of the meta. And I think a lot of people wouldn't mind if he was nerfed out of the meta. But he is really cool to watch. I think he has a lot of potential. So, we'll see. Just be ready to read every patch notes very, very carefully. Because he gets a lot of changes. Okay, so let's talk about Gold Minus a little bit here. I think Darius is going to be King of the Roost. I think it's a pretty easy call, too, in Gold Minus. And a lot of this just stems from people just don't respect his damage. Like, they know he does a ton of damage, but they just think they can walk up and take that minion, you know, when he has his ult ready. And, you know, maybe, like, they know that he could kill them, but they just don't understand that he's going to pull them in, cripple them, and they're going to die. Especially, I think it's been more popular lately to take Ghost on Darius. It's super frustrating because you just can't get away from him. Most champions can't. He just runs at you, grabs you, and you're dead. That's it. And he scales pretty well into team fights, too. As far as, like, a bruiser, sort of, like, all-in champ, like, he can get a lot of resets and kill a lot of people. Like, his true damage is very high in team fights. Like, once he stacks up that hemorrhage on somebody and then spreads it to everybody else, you know, it can just be completely devastating. And then the amount of, like, true damage that you get off this Noxus guillotine or whatever is just huge. So, I think that he's very good. I don't think a lot of people would contest this. You know, he is the dominant champion bot lane in Gold Minus. People rage about him all the time. They don't know how to play against him. They don't respect him. Now, he's probably got a pretty high ban rate. His win rate's probably, like, close to 50%. Yeah, he has a 32% ban rate, so that's kind of the downside of playing him, is that he's going to get banned a lot of the time. So you want to make sure you have a backup, but, you know, if you can master him and he's not that hard to master, then you can gain a ton of elo off of him. Okay, Yorick is another one that I mentioned before, and he doesn't have a very high ban rate, but he almost always has a high win rate. And the main reason is sort of what I said before, is people just don't understand what he does. Like, the ghouls come out, they're not sure exactly how much damage those ghouls are going to do. They don't know how much damage Maiden does. It's just kind of weird. So people just don't know if they can all-in him or not, and he's just so strong at split pushing, and he's just so oppressive in the laning phase if he doesn't get ganked. That he's just perennially a champion that's going to have, you know, a 53+% win rate. They nerfed him a while back, and he's still really good. So I think he's a great one-trick. He's not that great in team fights. He's okay, but he is very, very good at split pushing, and he's actually pretty good, I think, at taking objectives, because now you can pull Maiden with you to go help you take out Baron or Dragon or whatever it is that you're doing. So I think he's going to be a pretty good one-trick overall. He's definitely one of those, you know, gems in the coal mine there, because he's only has a 2% pick rate and a 1% ban rate. So 3% presence, 53% win rate. That's huge. And he's been that way for a really long time. So I think he's definitely like the secret OP at Gold Minus. The reason you don't see him as much in Plat Plus is people do understand the ghouls. They do understand Maiden, and he's going to get camped a lot more because people are going to know he doesn't have a lot of escapes. So he can still be pretty good in Platinum, but he's definitely a menace at Gold and lower. So if you want something that's kind of hipstery, you know, that no one plays, no one picks, no one bans, but yet is still very good and is underappreciated, I think Yorick's definitely going to be your pick for top lane. Garen is another one, kind of similar to Darius. People just disrespect him all over the place. He's one of the easiest champions to play in the game, so, you know, whether or not you want to spend 300 games playing Garen is a question you have to ask yourself. A lot of these one-tricks, one of the really cool aspects of them is that you can play, like, you get rewarded for playing them a lot more. You're going to hit the cool skill shots. You're going to get the massive outplays and fun. But if you're just looking to just straight win a lot of games and you just want to play a champion that can give that to you, I think Garen's going to be really good. There are some moments of, like, outplay with him. Like, you can press your W, you know, right when they're about to do their huge damage ability and block a lot of it. But by and large, he's very straightforward. People understand him. Spin to win. He's got a lot of mobility. You get free healing, especially after level 11. And he does a ton of true damage. So very similar to Darius, but I think not quite as oppressive as Darius. But just a pretty good, pretty simple champion to play. Jax is another one who's really strong. Thing about Jax is, like, he's not that great early. He's okay, but then once he gets items, he's probably one of the best, if not the best champion. It's just all of his items are very expensive, and they take a long time to come online. But once you get, like, Trinity Force plus Shojin, then it's off to the races. You can get Sterix also. He has a lot of different items that you can get to be very effective on him. There's even been some metas where he's taken Gunblade. They did nerf him a while back, but he's definitely a poster child for this kind of abuse too, where he gets a lot of free resistances off of his ult. He does a ton of damage, and he has pretty good mobility, especially with Shojin. And I think they're buffing him next patch. Although, once again, this isn't a patch-to-patch thing. But I think they're lowering the cooldown on his jump by like 2 seconds. So they're actually thinking about buffing him right now. But yeah, he's really good. You just kind of got to learn the matchup early, learn how to survive, wait on jungle ganks, and just sort of be patient with him. But then once you get going, people are not going to pressure you as much in gold and lower, so you're going to have time to really come online and do a lot of damage. But yeah, he can definitely take over the game in 1v9 by himself if he gets a couple of items. And then Yasuo is another one that I'll put down here, and Yasuo is kind of an odd duck because people would think, well, he's one of the hardest champions in the game to play, so, you know, only challengers should play him. But in fact, he has a much, much higher win rate at like gold and lower than he does in challenger. And the reason is he's just so dangerous. Like, if he gets camped or outplayed or just falls behind at all in challenger, he's going to get punished so hard. Versus, like, at gold and lower, you know, he's going to get a chance to come back into the game. You know, the famous 0-10 Yasuo power spike can happen in gold and lower. That's not happening in challenger, right? The game's going to be over by the time he's 0-7. So, you know, once you get your Infinity Edge plus Static Shiv, he can definitely, like, completely win team fights by himself if you're really, really good on him. I mean, everyone's seen all the Yasuo montages out there. One of the hardest champs to play, you know, very high skill cap, very high reward, completely just destroys ranged champions, especially in the top lane if you find yourself against, like, a Kennen or, you know, a Teemo or something like that. He's going to be pretty good because that win wall is going to block a lot of that aggression. So yeah, going to be very strong, kind of flexible. Obviously, he depends on crit. You know, if crit's terrible, then he's not going to be that great. But there have been some other builds that people have taken in the past. I've seen Yasuo's take things early, like a Wit's End, and be pretty effective. There have been some metas where, you know, he's taken like a Bloodthirster kind of early. So he's got a few different things he can get. Although, obviously, if crit gets nerfed, he's in a bad spot. But crit almost never gets nerfed. There was really just that half a year last year where crit was garbage, but throughout the rest of League's history, crit's been pretty good for the most part. So I think it's a pretty safe bet that he's going to have good itemization. Okay, let's move on to jungle, and we'll get moving a little bit faster. I want this to be probably about 59 minutes or so, a little bit less than an hour. But a lot of these picks are also going to double in other lanes. That'll allow us to talk about them a little bit faster. Okay, Kha'Zix. Kha'Zix is historically almost always going to be one of the best champions out there, and the reason is he's just so good at dueling, so he can go into the enemy jungle and really tear people up. He farms single target monsters really well, so like the buffs, Gromp, Scuttle, even golems to an extent, like the big golem, he can do pretty well at taking that out. Dragons, he takes dragons really well. Then obviously anytime he gets any kind of isolation on people, he's going to do a ton of damage, and he's pretty flexible. You know, obviously he's going to like things like electrocute and lethality and stuff like that, but there have been some other builds that have cropped up over time, so even though they have nerfed out those items, typically also then he still is pretty good. But then also usually when they nerf lethality, Kha'Zix is someone that's at the forefront of their mind, and they end up buffing Kha'Zix to make up for the nerf to lethality. So they try to make it to where he's always like one of the premier assassins in the jungle. I don't know why oh, there he is. But yeah, he just does a ton of damage, especially kind of in the Clown Fiesta that we see all the time. If you can get these isolation hits on people, so like against enemy junglers, or if you catch the support out trying to ward, you know, just being able to pop out of a bush, go invisible, and just delete somebody like pretty much one shot is just so strong in solo queue. And almost all of the top-end junglers have some Kha'Zix somewhere in their kit. I think Santorin is an exception to that. He doesn't have any Kha'Zix, but a lot of the people that like aren't pro players that play the jungle a lot will have some Kha'Zix somewhere in their kit. It's pretty much all 80 carries up near the top right now. I'm trying to think of the other jungler. I don't know if Blabber had Kha'Zix or not. Blabber doesn't have it either. He's another pro player. But Kha'Zix is usually up there. This is like one of the metas where he's not as powerful as usual. Like he's kind of at a low point right now, but I think in many metas he is still going to be very, very good. And I think he's worth putting the time in. So like he's got basically a 52% win rate, only a 13% pick ban rate, and this is pretty common. When he's really OP and pro, like this ban rate might spike up to 20 or 30%, but a lot of times he's under the radar. He's 9%. You know, Lowalytics rates him as, you know, one of the best junglers, but a champion that's like that hard to play, that's an assassin, being up that high is pretty good. You notice a lot of the champions that are up high are like pretty easy to play champions, right? They're like tanks, bruiser, you know, point click type of stuff, but he's actually pretty hard to play correctly. So I think he's a really good choice. Another one is Lee Sin, especially at kind of these higher level brackets. Lee is a darling of the League community. You know, Riot pretty much always wants Lee to be like at least viable in the meta. Like right now, so he's very rarely like the best jungler possible at like super top end meta, but he's always like pretty good. And the thing about Lee is he's pretty versatile as well, right? Like he has really good mobility in the jungle. He has really good dueling potential if you hit your Qs. He can go, you know, like warrior early and start snowballing hard off of that and just keep getting more AD if he wants to kind of go for one shot, or he can transition into kind of a disruption tank and just get those insect kicks later on. So he's one of the hardest champs in the game to play, which is what I've said about a lot of these. But that's what makes him good one tricks, because a lot of people, he is actually super, super popular, even though a lot of people aren't good on him. But if you put the time in, he's going to be good. I don't think he's picked a lot, but he's not banned a lot. From what I'm remembering. Let me see his pick right here. Yeah. He's banned a decent amount, which doesn't make a ton of sense. So he's got a really high presence. You want to have a backup plan if you want to try to play him, but he definitely can be really good. He does fall off hard late game, so you have to snowball early, but you can definitely take over the game in 1v9 as Lee. Okay, Kindred is another one, and this one is one that's becoming a lot more popular over the last couple of years, I think. But she has received several buffs as well that kind of went under the radar over time. But she's a champion that many of the top-end challengers have been picking up lately, and she's very versatile. So you can go like a crit build with her. I think there's kind of like a more bruisery type of build with her, I believe. I'm not 100%. But I think that you can go crit, or you can go things like Death's Dance type of builds on her. I haven't really followed Kindred too well. But if you're really good with her, if you like learn when those marks are going to come up, and you're really good at like pathing to go collect those marks on time, once you get that 4th mark, it's definitely off to the races. And a lot of the top end junglers, I'm pretty sure, play Kindred. I know I just said that about Kha'Zix, and people weren't biting on it, but a lot of them have Kindred in there somewhere. So he's got Kindred as a pick, you know, that he's picked sometimes. I don't remember who else is even a jungler here. Yeah, he's got Lee Sin and Kindred here too. So Kindred's almost in everybody's repertoire. And the reason is, you know, she's just very good at dueling. She scales really well, and she's like an AD carry. So she's ranged. She takes Barons quickly, Dragons quickly, Towers quickly. So it's like you have an extra AD carry on your team that also has nice utility with that ult, which just completely stuffs team fight, like hard engaged teams. So things like a Mumu, Rumble, Cannon, all of this stuff just gets completely whacked by Kindred whenever she ults. It negates a lot of that. So you got to practice it. You don't want to ult at the wrong time, or you can ruin the fight for your team. But she's very, very good if you get used to her. So I think good brawler. You know, she has a lot of power. She has like okay mobility. It's not insane. She is kind of squishy, but that does give her some extra survivability with her ult, a little bit of extra resilience. But I think she's one of the hardest snowball types of champs out there. Jarvan's another one who just kind of finds his way into the meta very, very often. He had been missing for the last year or so, but then they gave him some recent buffs, and he's showing back up again. For people who don't remember, Jarvan was like really OP for like a year and a half or 2 years. I think it was like Season 6 or Season 7. And he's been around a lot in a lot of metas. He has very good early game pressure with his flag and drag. That knock up does a ton of damage. Pretty much have to flash early if you don't have a dash available, or he'll one-shot you. He has a very unique form of CC. Where people can't QSS it. If they don't have mobility, then they're going to die. It's really good combination with a lot of these AoE teamfight things. So if you dunk them with Jarvan, then Rumble throws the ult on him, or, you know, Vlad ults him, or Cannon ults him, or just anything that does AoE, they're going to get stuck in it. So that's really good. He's also just naturally has really high tank values, just like really high stats. He has Armor Shred, AoE Armor Shred on his Q. His flag gives everyone extra attack speed. So he has just really nice buffs, really nice utility. He can be very aggressive early. He can transition and tank later. So there's a bunch of different items you can get on him. A bunch of different ways you can play him. But especially in metas that are really gank heavy, which is what Riot seems to like. They really don't like these kind of like farm off jungle metas. Then he's going to be one of the good picks. So right now he actually was the most picked in LCS. I don't remember what his win rate is, but it's usually pretty good. It's over 50% most of the time. So he's only got 18% presence, but yeah, really, really good champion. Doesn't quite 1v9 hard carry as much as some of these champs, but you can definitely take over games with him. And he's certainly going to be a lot better if it's kind of like a closer game and if you're behind. And then Sylas, we talked about Sylas before. You can play him in the jungle too. Okay, gold minus. Master Yi is definitely going to be one of the champs that's up there. The champion's just ridiculous. People never draft enough CC to deal with him. They never close out games fast enough. Even if he goes like 0-3, 0-4 early game, if he just farms up and gets a couple of items, he just takes over. Very versatile itemization. You know, they've nerfed out Gensu's. Doesn't matter. Still dominates with it. Blazing King still dominates with it. They're not going to nerf the attack speed jungle items. So as long as he has those items, he just takes over. And they've tried nerfing him a few times. They've also buffed him a few times. It's kind of like Sylas. It feels like he just kind of has like a put underneath him, to use kind of a financial term there. But it feels like he just kind of has this safety net underneath him, where Riot just feels like they're not going to nerf him more than they have. If they nerf him, they're going to buff him. You know, they're going to just change him. Kind of like with Sylas. They just do not want him to fall out of the meta. Especially lower elos. So that's what it feels like to me anyways. So very, very strong. You know, everyone's seen Master Yi. He's just such a pest to deal with. Those alpha strikes make it very difficult for point click abilities on him. He just, you know, can pretty much 1v1 auto attack anyone down if he doesn't get CC'd. You can take things like Quicksilver Sash. you know, as a fourth item to help get you out of one piece of CC. You know, it's just, and he takes Barons quickly. He can split push and take Dragons quickly. He can 1v1 people. He can team fight. He's just the total package. If he gets 3 items, he's extremely difficult. He's probably the hardest, like the most hard carry 1v9 champion in the game. Just at Platinum Plus, people often shut him down a lot more. Games don't go that long. People get a lot of CC and chain CC him. Or they'll invade him and beat him up early with things like Kha'Zix, Lee Sin, Kindred, stuff like that. But Gold and lower, they're just going to sit there and farm it off with him, and he's going to take over eventually. So I think he's really good. Shaco's another one. This one might surprise some people, but Shaco historically has been one of the best one-trick junglers. And it's kind of like Yorick, where people just don't understand what he does all the time. They get faked out by his clone. They don't respect like his gank angles. You know, he can come in invisible over walls. He has a lot of tricks. You know, he can take Dragon quickly, Barons, Towers. He's got a lot of sneakiness about him, and his itemization historically has been pretty versatile. You know, he did get hurt by the Tiamat nerf, but you know, historically he can build things like crit. He can, I don't think he ever goes like Death's Dance type of builds, but he can go like lethality builds with Dustblade. He can go crit builds. He can go like Trinity Force builds. There's just all sorts of stuff you can get with him. So super versatile. It just really doesn't matter which items they nerf, which runes they nerf. He always finds a way to be relevant. So at gold minus, I think he's going to be really good. Kayn is another one that is really nice at gold minus because people will just allow him to farm up his transformation. If he gets it, it's really good. And particularly Blue Kayn has been nerfed several times. Riot wants him to be like the highly mobile one-shot champ. And that's what he is. You know, a lot of people are not drafting tanks in most metas right now. People don't like to play tanks. People don't like to play against tanks. There's just a lot of tank hate out there. And Riot is, you know, complicit in that, right? They keep nerfing tanks. They just don't want tanks to be back in the meta full time is what it seems, at least not in solo queue, although they are popping up a little bit again in pro play with like Sejuani and things like that. But he's just really good. You know, he has interesting gank angles. If you go Blue Kayn, you can one-shot squishies if their team doesn't have any tanks or they only have one tank. You can just very easily get to that back line and kill people, especially if there aren't a lot of hourglasses and stopwatches. He's going to be really, really strong in that sense. You can also go red tank or red Kayn and still be really like a really strong healer, bruiser, frontline type of champ. You know, he's got disruption with his knockup. You can easily get to that back line and ult the AD carry to cause a lot of problems. You can heal through a lot of the damage they have if they don't have grievous wounds. So I think he's fairly versatile, fairly good. A little bit weaker in the early game. He does have nice clear. So that's why he can get punished in Platinum Plus, but I think especially at Gold and lower, he's can potentially be really good. Rengar's another one who's pretty good. People just don't respect invisibility, and once he starts snowballing, he just completely deletes people. Very similar to Kayn in the sense that a lot of people play a lot of squishy champions, especially in Gold minus, and you're going to have access to kill them, especially if you go invade the enemy. Like, they're just not going to expect you to be there, and once you start jumping out and, you know, taking people over in those bushes, you can completely shut down the enemy jungle, completely one-shot the AD carry. And he's pretty versatile as well. Typically, he needs lethality, but I have seen there have been some, like, tank Rengars in the past. I think they've nerfed that a lot, but there's been some stuff like that, bruisery type of build. So I still think he's going to be really good. He does take a while to get going. He requires level 6 before he really comes online, but he is very good once you get him online. He could definitely snowball hard. And then finally, we have Hecarim. Hecarim's almost always pretty relevant. They have nerfed him quite a bit over time, but, you know, he's pretty versatile as far as, like, the runes you can take on him. Like, more and more people, I think, are starting to take things like Ignite Smite on him instead of Ghost. I don't even know what the current runes are that you would go on him. You could probably take something like Aftershock if you wanted to. You know, people had been taking the, I mean, I guess I could just look here and see real quick. I know people had been taking, like, the movement speed one. Yeah, the Predator, but now people are taking Conquer on him instead, mostly. So there's just a lot of different ways you can build him. You do need Trinity Force, and typically people are going Warrior, although in the past, some people have gone Cinderhulk on him. But aside from Trinity Force, which they're probably not going to nerf, that's just kind of like an iconic item or change. You know, he's pretty good. He can gank really well in the early game. He scales great into the mid game. He can sort of fall off late game. You know, after his Trinity Force, that's when he's strongest. But he's still really good. He has great backline access. 80 carries are super strong right now in this meta. And if you can just shut those down, if you can get on the backline and kill them, you'll probably win the team fight. So he has been nerfed some, but I still think he's pretty good. All right. Mid lane, Akali, Sylas, and Irelia can be played mid. Already talked about them. Not going to rehash that. Cassiopeia is another one that I think almost always finds her way into relevance. She has been nerfed out a lot in the past, but if you're just really good at hitting those Qs and just like kiting with your E, you know, she can be very mobile in team fights. She puts out a ton of damage. They recently changed her W so that it grounds people a little bit easier. Even people that are right in your face. She's got her ult to help stop divers. She does take a while to come online. You know, you usually need a tier build. I think most people are just doing tier and then going for the classic Leandri's Rylai's build on her now. So in the past, people have tried like tier plus Rod. I think that's too much scaling, but I think you can still do tier and be pretty good on her. So, you know, they've changed her a bunch of different times. You know, it was Q max earlier in the year. Now it's E max. You know, they changed her W around. So they keep changing all this stuff around about her. But the bottom line is she's really good. And if you do ever start to see a tank meta coming back in, she's going to be one of the premier mid laners. So she is good, even if it's not a tank meta, into a lot of matchups if you're good on her. But especially in a tank meta where you're going to have to try to plow through the Sejuani or the top lane Maokai, or things like that, then she is going to be pretty good. And she's picked a decent amount, I think. Actually, not that much, but she still has some presence. Okay, so she's going to be pretty good. Talon is another one, kind of the solo queue special, just push and roam. You know, push in mid lane as fast as you can. You can one-shot people. You can jump over walls, take it to bottom lane. It's just classic. You know, he's been that way for years. You never see him in pro play, but he's just really, really good. A lot of single target damage, a lot of mobility, good wave clear. He's one of the people where his wave clear has not been nerfed that much over time, whereas a lot of assassins have been. Only he and Zed have escaped. And the reason that I don't put Zed here, Zed is also very good, but the thing is that Talon gets banned, or Zed rather gets banned way more than Talon does. So if you look at mid lane, let me just look at ban right here. You know, Zed's going to be banned 40% of the time, and Talon is only banned 12%. So that's the real difference there, and that's why I prefer Talon. I think they're very similar. Zed is, you know, has more mobility. He has kind of more outplay potential, but Talon's just very straightforward, does a similar job to Zed, I think. Similar win rates overall. But, you know, Zed has the 40% ban rate, so it's a lot more likely that he's going to be banned out. People just get annoyed by Zed. I don't know why they don't get as annoyed by Talon, but whatever. That's why I like Talon a bit more. Now, he does rely pretty heavily on lethality, but he can still be pretty good. Even if lethality gets nerfed, people will find a way to make him good. Okay. Talia is another one, and Talia can also be played in the jungle, and she doesn't have the greatest win rate right now, but she's still pretty good. Like, she can still wave clear a little bit. She has really good roam into side lanes. That wall has a lot of utility in team fights if you split people up, where you can, like, trap people in Baron Pit or Dragon Pit and then just, like, dump a whole bunch of AoE on them. There's a lot of nasty things you can do with Talia's wall, aside from just the mobility, which is already pretty good. Just the fact that she just seems to be good with a lot of different items and a lot of different metas in the mid or in the jungle. Makes her pretty good in my mind. So I think she's still going to be a strong champ moving forward. And then Qiyana is kind of a newer champion, but I don't think they're nerfing her anytime soon. People are getting used to her. She just has a lot of utility. There's a lot of different stuff you can do with her little charge system or whatever, between going invisible and doing a lot of damage. She has some okay CC, especially if people are standing near walls. Now, part of why she's good right now, too, is a lot of people just don't understand exactly what she does most of the time. But nevertheless, people are starting to get a bit more proficient on her. She still is not banned that often, and she can do a ton of damage. Now, she is dependent on lethality. She needs her Duskblade and her Ghostblade to be good. But I think moving forward that she could be a really good option just because of her versatility. I think she's a bit more versatile than Talon or Zed. But she's also a lot harder to play. But I think that she's definitely a champ for the future. But we'll see. Gold minus, I think Ahri, just very consistent. You know, Ahri's almost always like 53% win rate or higher. You almost always see her top 5 win rate. And I guess she's a little bit lower here. She's a little bit lower, I suppose. This is some of the lowest she's been in a while at 52%. But she also has a pretty high play rate at 9%. but still only a combined 14% pick plus ban. She's just really mobile. You know, she can get away from a lot of situations. She can charm people with her ult. She has pretty good burst damage. She has kind of versatile itemization. More and more people are kind of doing the Twin Shadows GLP build. But she can do a more traditional kind of like electrocute build if you want to do that as well. So different runes, different items are all versatile on her. She's mobile. She does pretty high damage. Fairly easy to play. I think she's going to be solid. Malzahar is similar in the fact that he has really good wave clear. He has a point-click, lockdown ult that just pretty much never goes out of style. He has pretty good itemization. The items that he likes to build pretty much never get nerfed. The Rylai's, the Liandry's. I wouldn't be surprised if those items actually get buffed in the next 6 months or so. I know they had thought about it on the PvE for a little while, so I think he's going to be good. He doesn't roam quite as well as some of the other champions on this list, but he can still roam okay, right? Just because he has such great push. And those minions are pretty good too. His Voidlings can help you take towers and tank shots. They can help you with Dragon, Baron, things like that. So pretty versatile champ. Great at power farming. Very simple to play. Always useful even if you're behind. Great for gank assists. That'll get your jungler to come to your lane, give you a lot of free kills. Okay, Yasuo, we talked about him before. Very hard to play, but you can definitely punish people in gold a lot more. Vladimir's another one that, you know, could still be good in Platinum Plus as well. You just kind of have to get used to him, but there are a whole bunch of different items over time that have been good on him. He has received some nerfs, but he just has a lot of sustain. He's really good at team fighting. He catches people off guard with the shocking amount that he heals and the shocking amount of damage that he deals. So I think he's still going to be, you know, just really powerful moving forward, especially if they buff Liandry's and Rylai's, which once again, I suspect they're probably going to make a move towards that. He doesn't always get those items right now. Sometimes he goes things like a Protobelt, just straight in a Death Cap, but he can get those items. So fairly versatile. Doesn't have a lot of CC that he brings to the table, so that's one of his major weaknesses. It's kind of tough to gank for him, but if you just want to leave him alone on an island in the mid lane or even in the top lane, it's kind of an honorable mention up there, then you can if you need an AP damage dealer. He's pretty, you can just slot him in. You can even put him in bot lane if you want to. Just slot him in somewhere. He'll be safe. You know, he'll scale up over time. He'll give you a good team fight later on. So I think he could be pretty good. And then Xerath is another great one trick. Has a lot of skill shots. If you actually do land his stuff, he does a ton of damage, and there's very little counterplay because he's such extreme range. So if he gets flanked, it's really bad. So in kind of the Clown Fiesta meta that we're in, if you're kind of wandering around through the jungle, you're just going to get deleted by things like, you know, Akali, Irelia, Kha'Zix, anything, right? But if you have, like, if you can completely dominate the laning phase, and if you have a good siege comp or you can get some protection around you, then he can be really good. He's just kind of one-dimensional, right? He's poke and siege. He can't play side lanes very well, which is kind of a liability in a lot of metas. He does not roam very well. He does have his ult, so he can contribute. If he hits those ult shots, that can be really good roaming, and they did buff his ult last patch, so he's still pretty good. I think he's definitely one-trickable. If you want to play like a long-range mage, I think he's going to be a better choice than something like Vel'Koz or Lux moving forward if you put a ton of games on him. Okay, let's look at bot lane here. I think Kai'Sa definitely has to be the number one trick, and the main reason for this is that she's just like one of the most versatile champions in the game, especially for AD carry. So you can build almost anything on this champion and make her work. You know, you've got the Stormrazor build right now. She is pretty dependent on Gensu's with a lot of her stuff, but even after the monster nerf to Gensu's, she still gets it, and she's still good. You can still go some AP items on her. People are even building like Manamune on her right now. You can go Nashor's Tooth. There have been times in the past she's gone Death's Dance. People even go crit on her sometimes if you want to do like Infinity Edge Hurricane. So it's just like a ton of different items you can go with Kai'Sa, and she's just kind of got the total package. She's really good at just like standing there, doing a ton of auto attack damage, doing her Vayne impression, you know, shredding through tanks or other people with high HP. But then she also has kind of the invisible mobility, kind of like Vayne as well, with her E. But then she's also got her ult to get a big shield and also to reposition, to dodge skill shots, or to really roam around and excel in the Clown Fiesta. If like you're Rakan, you know, CC someone, you know, over a wall 2,000 units away, you can zip over there and get a kill. She has great isolation damage with her Acacian Rain, especially once you get that upgraded. So she's good at dueling one-on-one, pretty good at team fighting. once you get Gensu's or Hurricane, where you can just start stacking up this passive really well. Really good itemization. Gives her access to things like Zhonya's if you really need it, like against like a Karthus or a Kayn or something like that. You could potentially get a Zhonya's. So she's so versatile. It's pretty much impossible to nerf her out. She's always going to be good. She's always going to be relevant in most metas. And that's the thing, is it's like pretty much everybody that plays AD carry here, one of their most played champs is always going to be Kai'Sa, and they're always going to have a high win rate with her, typically. So like there's 54%, Kai'Sa. There's a lot of AD carries near the top right now too. Kai'Sa, Kai'Sa is just everywhere, and it's been that way for like a year or so, and it's just because she's just always relevant. It doesn't matter which items are good, what enemies people are playing, you can just always pick Kai'Sa and feel pretty comfortable that if you're good on her, you have the ability to hard carry. So I think that Kai'Sa is still going to be very strong. Now Kai'Sa doesn't have a high win rate right now. These guys have a high win rate on her, but overall her win rate is pretty low. It's one of the lowest, at least last time I looked. It was like 50%. Although a lot of people, it's like 49% actually. So it's not amazing right now, but still very good. And the name of the game is versatility and scaling with her. Although, once again, she can bust people up if you get those isolation Qs early on. She can do a ton of damage, especially if you start with a BF sword build, like you go Stormrazor or Infinity Edge early. You can definitely crush some people. All right, Draven is another one that I put on there. And Draven could deserve to be the number 1 slot. He just does a ton of damage. Like, he comes to lane with basically a free BF sword off of his spinning axes. It, like, literally gives you 40 extra damage on your auto attacks. He scales extremely well off of AD. People think he doesn't scale that well later on in the game. He does. He's just kind of vulnerable. He doesn't have, like, good AoE damage, but he's very good at Clown Fiestas, right? He's very good at soloing people in little skirmishes, little 2v2, 3v3s. He just doesn't have, like, he doesn't build Hurricane. He doesn't have, like, so he's not going to do AoE damage like Jinx Rockets or Twitch or, like, Sivir with her boomerangs, flying around everywhere. He doesn't have that, so he doesn't scale as well in 5v5 team fights at 30 minutes. But he's still going to do really strong isolation damage throughout the whole game. And one of the big perks of him is if you are aggressive, if you are good, if you are dominating, you get a ton of extra gold off of his passive, League of Draven, which just completely catapults you harder than any other AD carry in the game. So yeah, just really, really good scaling off of his Q. Pretty good mobility with his Blood Rush. Stand Aside is actually surprisingly good utility spell. It stops a lot of movement. It could stop Jarvan from, flag and dragging onto you. It could knock Zac out of the air. Like, anything that's trying to run at you, if you get proficient with that Stand Aside, you can knock it aside. So I think that's really handy, and I think they nerfed the damage, or they, like, fixed a bug on his Whirling Death where it doesn't do as much damage as it used to, but still, he's great. I mean, he's my favorite AD carry to support bot lane because he's always aggressive and can just take over a game and, like, fully dominate if you just give him a kill or two. So, yeah, he's definitely someone I would highly recommend one-trekking. And I think he has pretty low presence as well. Yeah, bot lane, bans. It's okay. He's at 24%. Not a lot of AD carries are getting banned right now, so he's almost always one of the most banned AD carries, but it's very rarely over 20%. So, yeah, he's a bit higher than the 20% threshold that I mentioned earlier, but still going to be pretty solid. He's not picked very much. He's just banned a decent chunk. And he's pretty versatile, too, by the way. Just, like, not quite as much as Kai'Sa, but it's like, yeah, he does like to get Infinity Edge, but he's one of the few champions that gets Bloodthirster early. And that item pretty much never gets nerfed. I wouldn't be surprised if it actually got buffed at some point in the future. He can get Death's Dance at some point. He's even gotten Lethality in the past when Lethality was really OP with, like, Ghostblade, Dustblade. Don't do that right now. But I'm just saying, like, if tomorrow they decided they wanted to nerf crit by, the total damage output by 20% and buff Lethality's total damage output by 20%, he could very easily switch over and do Lethality as well. So, just very versatile. Really hard carry champion. Okay, Ezreal's another one who does have quite a bit of versatility as well. He can go Iceborne Gauntlet. He can go Trinity Force. He has to go Manamune, but that usually doesn't get nerfed. Manamune, and then in the past, he's gone things like a second tier with Archangels. He's gone things like Gunblade. He's gone things like Blade of the Ruined King, Mortal Reminder. You know, you can put almost anything on him as third, fourth, and fifth item. And be pretty efficient over time. I think they are nerfing his AP build a little bit more next patch, but he'll probably still be all right. He's just really versatile, you know. He's super safe, safest AD carry. You can poke with your Q. You can farm easily with your Q, especially if your support's roaming around. You can snipe people out with your ult. You get a lot of extra gold off of Kleptomancy early. He is not very good at early all-ins. He can be if you're using your E and you land your W and Qs and you actually land everything and full combo somebody, you can do decent damage early on if you have an all-in support, but he's pretty much known for his safety and his positioning. So pretty much every top-end AD carry, every pro, every challenger AD carry is going to be able to play Ezreal. And so he's been very relevant for a long time. He's great at most metas. He's really fun to play. He does have a very high presence, 48%, so, you know, 33% pick rate. He's the most picked, and he's one of the most banned. But, you know, so have a backup plan if you like to play Ezreal. But if you do get good on him, he's almost always going to be relevant just because of his kit. Okay, Xayah's another one, and she's kind of one of those undercover OP type of champs. A lot of people think about her with Rakan, and she is super good with Rakan, and I think Rakan is the best overall one-trick support, so that's another reason to try to play Xayah. But she's just kind of versatile too. You know, she can go crit build. She pretty much wants to get crit most of the time, but she can go Infinity Edge or Essence Reaver fairly early. And she has really good peel, like self-peel, you know, throwing down those daggers. A lot of people aren't going to be paying attention to them, the feathers rather. A lot of people aren't going to be paying attention to the feathers, and so you can get some really surprising burst damage, very good team fight damage. And just really good if people are trying to dive you with that ult in combination with the feathers, just deleting people late game. So I think she's really, really solid moving forward. She is kind of weird. You can catch people off guard if you like flash and then pull the feathers back to get the correct angle to get the stun. Like there's a lot of outplay potential that can make you feel really good if you use it correctly as Xayah. She has awesome wave clear, some of the best wave clear in the game with her feathers, outside of something like Sivir. So I think that she's definitely someone to invest in for the long term. And Rakan's almost always really good as well. So if you have Xayah and you know someone else on your team's playing Rakan, that's definitely you have the best, you know, level 1 and level 2 all-in the game, which can definitely help you snowball. Okay, Lucian's another one who just has a very versatile build path. Almost all of top-end players are good at Lucian, and when he's really strong, he can be very oppressive in the meta. He's great early game pressure. 80 carry, does a ton of damage off of just his abilities. Pretty versatile as well. You know, people have gone Black Cleaver in the past on him, but lately more and more people are going towards Essence Reaver. So you'll see like Blatherin King into Essence Reaver into something like Rapid Fire Cannon. So pretty versatile build path overall. Yeah, you see some people even going like Bloodthirster on him, Infinity Edge on him. So there's a lot of different items you can get with him. Rune-wise, you know, he does prefer getting Presty Attack. That hasn't really received much attention, so I think it's unlikely that's going to get nerfed. But yeah, you can just see here, there's a lot of different, like, fairly high percentages on his build. So very versatile overall. Good at punishing, you know, punishing people early. Great all-in. He's okay late game. They did buff his ult where it does more damage. He does kind of have to get close. He doesn't have the AoE damage, once again, for 5v5s like Sivir, like, you know, like Jinx. But he's pretty good at dueling. Can he duel someone like Kai'Sa or Draven 1v1 late game if the items are even? I don't know. Maybe if he gets a jump on him. But he can kind of have a hard time dueling people if he doesn't get ahead late. But his early game is phenomenal. And the fact that he has that ult and he can do so much damage without really getting close is pretty nice for someone who's primarily a duelist. That he does have at least a little bit of kind of range and teamfight presence is pretty cool, especially if you go for the Black Cleaver build and you have a heavy AD team. It can be pretty nice, but I think he's someone that you definitely want in your back pocket. The gold minus ones, I think that Jinx is someone that you definitely want to keep in mind. Very simple to play. You have a lot of tools in your toolkit. You got the Chompers, which are really nice for stopping mobility. It's great against things like Rakan, because when he goes in, it makes it difficult for him to go back out. She can snipe out free kills with her rockets. Her zap does a pretty good amount of damage. And then those rockets late game, of course, not only give you a ton of damage, but just a huge amount of AoE with Hurricanes and Infinity Edge, or with Hurricane and Infinity Edge. So I think she's really good. Her main drawback is it's really easy to engage on her. Like, she doesn't have any mobility. If she gets flanked or, engaged on by, Rakan, Pyke, Blitzcrank, flanked by Kha'Zix, Hecarim, anything like that, she's going to get deleted. So she can be really good, but you got to have some protection. And if games go longer and you get 3 or 4 items on her, you can definitely take over. So I think she's someone to watch. Draven, also very good at gold minus, pretty much good at all elos. So once again, highly recommend Draven. Sivir's another one that is pretty good at high elo too, at different times. She has been nerfed out some, but I think she's very good in low elo too, just because she can power farm. It's really hard to do anything to her in lane because she just keeps pushing in a tower over and over again. And she's just a really good team fighter. And she's really good at kind of the Clown Fiesta because you can ult and like run your team around to go catch out the enemy who's out of position, pushing a side lane without wards or something like that. So she's just got a lot of utility, does a ton of damage in AoE fights, and has really good farming and wave clear. So I think she's pretty good. Tristana's another one. You're kind of seeing her show up in solo lane some. I know it's kind of like everyone's trying that out, but it really doesn't have that much overall presence. It's cute. You see it some. But as far as bot lane goes, she snowballs really hard. If you get a couple of kills, you can just jump on people with that W, do a ton of damage. I don't have her up here as kind of your one trick just because she can get punished because she has a hard time managing the waves she has to push. And if they push into you, it's really hard to last hit on her tower because of her explosive shot. She's also really short range, and she doesn't have a ton of burst early if they dodge your W. But if you do get ahead, she does get some of the longest range in the game. She takes towers really quickly. She's super safe. She not only has like a dash to get away, but it also buffers, which means that it can block a lot of CC that can hit her. So I think that overall she can be very good. And Jin's another one, kind of like what I was talking about with some earlier champions. He just catches people off guard with that 4th shot. People just won't respect it. They'll stick around with lane with like 200 health, and he'll just flash, 4th shot him, and grenade him and kill him for like 300 damage at level 1 or level 2. Happens all the time. So he does a surprising amount of damage. People don't respect it. People don't dodge your ult shots as well later on. And you do scale pretty well. His items are very expensive if you go multiple Infinity Edges, which is the most popular build right now. But he can put out a lot of pressure early, and he can be stronger later. So I think he's pretty good at gold minus. A couple other honorable mentions. I think that the new Ashe build with Trinity Force and Essence Reaver right now is pretty good. It's got good engage. It's got good poke. But you kind of have a Jinx problem where you can get engaged on and just deleted because you don't have any mobility. So, that can be an issue as well. But I think she's someone else that definitely could be pretty decent. Miss Fortune's another one that's good. She's pretty easy to play. I don't think you need to one-trick her to be that proficient on her, but she could be all right. And then Twitch is another one that I've mentioned a lot in the past. You definitely can play him and one-trick him. The invisibility is very strong. He does have a lot of good AoE team fight capabilities like Jinx, so Twitch is another one that you could definitely pick, but I'm not going to talk about him too much because we need to go ahead and end this video soon. But I do want to talk about the supports here just as the last little bit. I think at Platinum Plus, I think that Rakan is going to be the best. They've changed him. They've nerfed him a lot over time, but nevertheless, he's still really good. Some of the best engaged in the game. Has great mobility. 3 different dashes, including 1 free dash where you don't have to be, close to anybody to dash. So I think that just makes him really good at roaming. I think it makes him really good at hard engage, team fight, skirmishing. He's even okay in the laning phase. If you land that W, you've got some pretty good trading potential because you can W, knock him up, auto attack, Q him, and then E back to your ally. And if they just hit him with some kind of skill shot, Sivir throws a boomerang, Jinx throws a zap or whatever, you probably just did a third to a half of their health and they didn't even get to hit you back. That heal is really nice on him. The heal plus the shield gives him a deceptively large health pool, effective health pool in the laning phase, so that you can take some trades like that, even if they hit you back a little bit. You can take those trades. And then commonly you take Guardian on him, which is an additional shield, and you take Bone Plating, which are additional, damage mitigation tools. And then the most popular build right now is Presence of Mind, and then I'm blanking out, but in the Resolve tree down near the bottom, Unflinching, the bottom right tree, Unflinching plus Tenacity in the Presence of Mind Precision tree. Gives you a lot of tenacity. Now, tenacity stacks multiplicatively rather than additively, but still, you're basically going to be reduce the amount of CC you take by about 1/3 just off of your runes, which is really, really nice on him. And he has a lot of versatility. You know, there have been times in the past people have gone airy on him, especially in his secondary. You know, there are still people that get different things for the secondary. You know, some people go Cosmic Insight Biscuits. Some people still go like Nimbus Cloak Transcendence. There's just so many different runes you can get on him and items. You know, Zeke's is still popular, but more and more people are trying out Athene's on him and Ardent Censer again. Redemption's been popular in the past. Knight's Vow's been popular. Shurelya's has been popular. So I think he's the most versatile support out there in terms of itemization, runes, and playstyle. You know, you can be hard engaged, but he's also really good against assassins because you can build armor with things like Knight's Vow plus Zeke's, and you can give a shield to your ally and yourself off of Guardian, and his E scales really well with levels and with any AP that you get. So I just think he's super versatile. He's great. It takes a while to learn when you should go in and when you shouldn't, and it's very easy to get greedy with him and go in when you shouldn't or stay too long before you go back out because he can be very squishy most of the time. But I still think he's going to be really, really good. He's been top of the line for years. I mean, there's a reason that he's one of the only champs. For the last 2 worlds, he has a world skin. He has the IG skin from last year and then the blue one from the SSG skin from before. I don't know the exact stats. He might be one of the only champions with multiple world skins. He's certainly in good company. So, especially in the last 2 years. And look at this. He's still really, really popular right now. Even after all these nerfs, even though everyone said, oh, he's dead. You know, the change to his R, he's never going to be good anymore. It's like, well, here he is. #1, highest presence, going into Worlds again, support, and he already has 2 world skin. Probably going to be working on a 3rd one this world. So, you want a hard carry, you better play Rakan. So, yeah, I think Rakan's great. Thresh is really good too. Thresh has been nerfed a little bit, but he also got buffed last year. The thing with Thresh is, like, you need to play a lot of games as Thresh. Like, you need to be hitting, like, 50% of your hooks and flays to make him work. And everyone's just so used to dodging those hooks and just, like, playing around his flays. The lanterns are nice. Sometimes people don't click on the lantern, but overall, if he's played at, like, maximum aptitude, he's the best support. It's just, like, can you get there? Though, right? Can you flay every movement that's coming in? Can you land all of your hooks? Right? Can you, place the lantern in the perfect spot? But similar to Rakan, he has great engage. He has great roaming. He has really good all-in threat early on with the flash flay, the, classic flash flay level 2 all in with him. His itemization is pretty good. It's not as good as Rakan. Like, those items are actually good on Rakan. Thresh is like, most items are bad on him, so you just pick whatever are the best overall items. So right now he's, taking stuff like Redemption, which is really not that great on him. It's okay. But typically he'll just take, like, Zeke's Redemption or Redemption Locket or something like that and just call it a day. So his scaling is kind of subpar on his items. He does get some extra stuff off of his souls, obviously, but nevertheless, he's still going to be very, very strong. Great mixture of offense and defense. Really strong champ. Still has, like, decent pro presence. Almost always has pro presence. I'd say he's one of the most popular supports of all time, if not the most popular support of all time in pro. As far as, like, popularity, I think he's always the most popular, right? Like, yeah, pretty much always. A really nice perk about Rakan, though, look at this. Look at this. Like, under a 7% pick rate and less than a 1% ban rate. Nobody picks or bans his champion, and he's OP as hell. So that's really the thing with Rakan, and why I've been spamming Rakan, like, really hard over the last few weeks. Versus Thresh is very good, but he does have a 34% presence. So, take that for what it is. They're both very good. Okay, Pyke is another one, and Pyke is a little more dangerous because, like, they have nerfed Pyke hard several times, but they've also buffed him. So I think he has kind of that level of safety net, like we've been talking about with Sylas and some other champs, where, he might get nerfed again, but if he does, they're going to buff him in some other way. So, like, right now, he gets a ton of gold off of his ult if you get it, but they've lowered his damage if you don't get the execute, and they completely got rid of his wave clear because he was taken over in solo lanes a couple of patches ago. But He's really nice. You know, he's got invisibility, so not only does he roam, but he's really fast with his W, and he has invisibility, so he can get around wards. Not only does that allow you to gank, it allows you to put safe, deep wards in the enemy jungle because you can bypass their wards with your W. Place yours. You can still place wards while you're invisible, by the way. You can't use your sweeper, but you can place wards while you're invisible. And then you can just E to get away. So, like, you just go deep in their jungle with your W invisible. Oops, someone spots you out. You walk over a pink or something. No problem. Just E, dash away. So he's got a freeform dash, kind of like Rakan, which allows him to be a lot more aggressive with his warding and with his engages because he always knows he can get back out. He has a really low cooldown hook. His hook is only like 12 seconds level 1, and most champions are like Nautilus, Blitz, and Thresh, I believe are all around like 18 to 20 seconds on their hook timers, but his is like 12 early on. So it's like, it's very, very low time on this. So if you miss, it's not as big of a deal. You can just keep chucking these hooks, and it's very cheap. It's only 70 mana versus like a Blitz hook is like 100. It's like, what? I don't know. You ask Riot, but anyways, he has one of the strongest hooks in the game. It can even pull people over walls. If they're standing close to a wall, it will actually pull them over. I don't think... I mean, Blitzes obviously will too. I don't think Thresh's ever pulls them over a wall. Nautilus obviously doesn't because it can't go through walls. But it's pretty nice. And then you have, you know, your Phantom Undertone. Great for escaping. Great for stunning multiple targets. You can follow it with a flash. And then his signature Death from below just really excels at crushing the Clown Fiesta. You just run around, pick up a bunch of free kills, and just get a huge payday out of it. And they just buffed it to where he gets like an extra 50% gold off of this. So you're just really getting a ton of items, and that allows you to get like Dustblade early, which gives you even better vision control. Ghostblade gives you extra mobility, so you can zip around the map and get to more fights. And pretty soon, you're actually like a pretty capable assassin. You can 1v1, especially if the AD carry's behind. You can probably 1v1 and kill the AD carry later on as a support as Pyke. So I think he has a ton of potential, but you got to practice him. You know, he is squishy. He does take Aftershock right now, but he still is fairly squishy, especially later on in the game. So you got to be very careful with your engages. And then for like super high elo challenger, like Braum, Tom, and Yuumi. So I say challenger because you have to be very certain that your AD carry and the rest of your team are going to be really, really good, and that you can play around these champs. Because these champs do not scale at all, but they have very good... Braum has really good team fight utility, so he's got a lot of stuns, he's got his shield, but he has like no scaling on his abilities. And then like Tom... And he has no way to start fights, really. I mean, I guess you can like flash ult or something like that, but it's really difficult for him to start fights. Similar with Tahm Kench, like you're really good at protecting your AD carry. You offer some poke in lane. His main perk is that you have the mobility of your ult to be able to, you know, zip around the map and protect your side lanes if you have a split pusher or you're trying to counter their split pusher. So it does make him very good. But in solo queue at lower elos, if people don't really like group up and you have Braum, or if they don't close out the game and it goes to 30 minutes and it's Braum versus Sona, you're going to get outscaled. As Tom, if nobody ever takes your ult and you're zipping around the map and like people don't follow you, that's going to be worthless. And then Yuumi is another one. Yuumi is under assault, though. People are banning, like, she gets banned a ton in, like, really high elo. Even though, I mean, I guess her win rate is pretty high, too. She gets banned quite a bit in solo queue, I think, too. Yeah. 46% ban rate in solo queue. I don't think she's, I mean, she's good. I don't think she's that problematic. She's been nerfed quite a bit. So if you do want to play her, just be aware that she's probably, if you're watching this in the future, she's probably been nerfed several times. But she can be very good if you have nice coordination on your team. If you get a lot of practice on her, she has very difficult to dodge poke in lane, pretty good scaling with her heal, very good ultimate for all ends. So she can be really, really good if you practice with her a lot. But much, much better in Challenger and Pro than in other ELO brackets. Because she can't really roam. You know, usually you're not going to get boots on her. If you do, it's often, even if they do catch you out, you have no other mobility, so you're going to die. So you have to have someone that helps you ward, that will walk out and roam with you to ward. And how often does that happen in solo queue? Not that often, especially lower brackets. So she's really good, but, you know, going to be better in something like Challenger. And then in gold minus, Pyke, once again, Clown Fiesta is very good at that. Zyra, very good at lane pressure, lane presence, completely take over. A little bit tough if you don't get ahead to get her items because they're very expensive and that can hurt you in the mid game, but she does a lot of base damage, and if you do get a couple of kills, you can totally dominate. Rakan, already talked about him, still going to be very strong. Um, Sona's another one that's just pretty much perennially really good. Like, if games are going long and you play Sona a lot, you're just going to scale. Like, they did nerf her scaling on her Q a little bit, but her W still scales through the roof. You know, once she gets Ardent Sensor plus Athene's, you know, if the fight goes for longer than 5 seconds and she doesn't die immediately, if she gets 2 Ws off, you win the fight, basically. So very simple to play, pretty good lane pressure, excellent ultimate for team fights, highest scaling support in the game, I would say. So still going to be good. And then Soraka is another one, kind of similar to Sona. Soraka has more extreme single target healing, but she's also hard countered by Grievous Wounds a little bit more than Sona. So, you know, take it for what it's worth. Soraka can be very good, but she's a little riskier if the enemy gets Grievous Wounds, but that doesn't happen as often in Gold Minus as it does in Plat Plus. So I think that she can shine if you get really good, especially at hitting her Qs and dominating the laning phase. You know, she can do very well. But anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you so much for watching. This video is definitely a bit longer than I thought, but I did go through a ton of champions. We went through, what, 50 champions? So hopefully a little bit more, because I talked about some that weren't even mentioned on the list, but went through 50 champs. So hopefully that gives you some ideas for different kinds of one tricks that you can pick. Yeah, so be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Check out the rest of the guides on the channel if you like this. Most of them are not this long. Most of them are usually like 30 minutes to an hour, but be sure to check it out. Come by, check out the stream, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Remember, Fridays and Saturdays, it's on Twitch, and then Sundays through Thursdays, it's on YouTube. You know, come by, drop a follow on Twitch. If you do have an Amazon Prime and you do want to sling a couple of dollars my way, don't forget, you know, now that we have a Twitch, you can sling it over there if you want to chip in a little bit to help out. But otherwise, that's going to be it. Have a good day. Thanks for watching. See you next time.